Oh, there we are. Okay. Thank you, Bo. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first budget briefing, and thank you, Mr. Carlson, for being here. I'll let you begin.
Great. We'll kick us off, and I'll say thank you to you all, Council Chair and Council members, for letting us come in today and provide some information to you and to the viewing public, some additional details about the 22-24 biennial budget. As you know, Mayor presented the budget last week and presented kind of an overview of the vision and the resources to achieve the community outcomes that we're all striving for. And today that will be the first half of departments offering additional information and details on their particular investments that they're going to be making to provide services and programs for the community. As normal, budget staff is here and I'm here. We'll continue to take notes and be able to provide any additional information and questions that are needed for follow-up after the meeting. As I said, we divided the presentation into two parts, so people watching should know that we'll have this afternoon, then we'll convene again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to do the second half of the departments. All part of our continuing process, working together to create the budget to help our growing community. So we'll continue that work together. We'll continue to get community feedback over the next 2 months, and ultimately the process leads up, just as an early heads up for folks watching, for our budget hearing that will be on August 1st at 3 p.m. here in the council chambers. So with that, I will kick us off and invite Chad Blaha, Director of Building and Safety, to come up and talk.
Welcome, Director.
All right. All right. Hello, Council and Madam Chair. Thank you for. You're going to get a lot of thank yous today for from folks, I'm guessing. But thank you for your time today, and thanks for allowing me to share a little bit about building safety and how we are intending to use our available resources to serve the residents of Lincoln. Our mission at Building Safety is to promote a high quality of life for Lincoln's residents through efficient, collaborative application of housing, construction, and life safety codes. And here is kind of an overview of the team that is dedicated to fulfilling that mission. Many of you are maybe a little familiar with how we are organized. We have, of course, Mayor, Director, and then we have 3 primary divisions within the department. We have Development Review, or Building Services, Development Services, been called a lot of things. We have Administration Division, and then our Inspections and Enforcement Division. However, there is a change this time around. We have created within the Administration Division a separate team, technology team, kind of as we try to improve our options and experience for our customers. Technology has become an increasingly large component of those efforts, and so that was part of the impetus for us kind of retooling an existing position into a technology team leader with that system supervisor position. So that's the team, and here are the proposed budgets that we are hoping to the proposed budget that will help this team serve the citizens of Lincoln in that capacity. Want to highlight there are a couple of changes from the currently approved budget to the first year budget. One of them is adding 3 additional FTEs to our staff, primarily in the plan review area, and then also we have a significant increase in our other services and charges category, and I'll explain both of those a little bit more in detail later. Here's kind of graphical representation of those numbers. As you, many of you know, we are a predominantly fee-funded department, very little general fund contributions. 15% is general fund, and like a lot of departments, also our personnel services makes up the vast majority of our expenditures and costs. And so that was our team and budget dedicated to serving Lincoln, and so now a little bit about the why we need this team and budget to serve Lincoln. We've seen a historically high level of development and construction in Lincoln over the past couple of years that has resulted in strong economic growth. And we have utilized a strong public and private partnership to support this growth and help to increase the growth. And then this slide expands on that a little bit. This partnership approach, combined with the strong infrastructure investments over the past couple of years, have helped fuel the development and has resulted in record-setting number of building permits, as you may imagine. This is just a small representation of the permit activity. This represents all new construction permits. So that's brand new single-family houses, brand new townhomes, brand new apartment buildings, brand new commercial structures. And as you can see, in the past, I believe I've talked about that 2017 year being a big year. It was one of our biggest years. You'd have to go back a couple of decades to see numbers that high in 2017. And as you can see, in 2020, we essentially met that number, and in 2021, we've exceeded it by a fair amount. And so here's the rest of those numbers. For describing the permit activity, won't go into all of them, but it also shows it's not just new construction that has increased. All of our permit types, building permit types, have increased across the board. So that's residential and commercial remodels, additions, or maybe tenant finishes, or sheds, decks. Everything has increased to near historic highs over the last couple of years, and the trend appears to be continuing in a similar direction. So this proposed budget and department structure invests in systems and personnel to improve upon the customer service that the residents of Lincoln have come to expect and, quite frankly, deserve. And so in that I hit it twice. In that regard, the first of those changes, like I mentioned before, we're proposing to add 3 additional FTEs to our department, 2 of which are going to be plan review, hopefully be plan review staff. What that'll allow is, additional person hours dedicated for direct communication with customers, additional person hours dedicated to actual plan reviews, and to continue to support the record levels of growth that the city has experienced. Also, one of our indicators that I'll mention later is a 10-day working day average for the first round commercial reviews. We've had some problems meeting that as of late, so we hope that improves. The inspector staff, addition to the inspector staff, will help us maintain an appropriate level of unclosed permits, and by what I mean by that is to actually maintain it and not allow that number to increase. The second item that we are proposing with this budget that will help us to continue to improve upon and provide excellent customer service, and you've heard a little bit about this one. We are replacing our permitting system, and thank you to you all for a couple of weeks ago or a little while ago approving the contract for that project. We're excited about this, and this system is intended to help streamline the online application, plan review, and issuance processes for the customers here in Lincoln. And like I said, it's not just a building and safety system. It's a multi-department system meant to provide permitting services for the city, not just building and safety. So one of the other goals is that it will provide a more consistent experience across multiple departments for our customers who choose the online permitting processes. And here's our performance measures. As you can see, we do fairly well in almost all of them. We're at or close to our goal in all of our performance measures. The one to highlight is that 10-day first round review for commercial properties, where our goal is to average 10 days or less. And for the fiscal year of 2020-21, we had actually exceeded the average just over 15 days for those reviews, and I expect the current 21-22 to be in that ballpark as well. So we're hoping to affect that with additional personnel, And a little bit farther down the road, the permit system should help in some of that as well. So with that, I don't have any more formal presentations, so I can answer any questions. if you have
Any questions for Director Blaha?
Sandra? Yes.
When you talked about the addition of the tech team within
Mhm.
administration, that's with no FTE, right?
Well, that, I should have explained that. That was we had a budgeted position as a data analyst. However, as we, particularly with the onset of this permitting system, we felt we needed a little bit elevated level of of leadership and expertise, and so we transitioned that from a data analyst to a system supervisor.
Thank
Yep,
you.
yep.
Any other questions? Councilman Beckius.
Yes, I perhaps I missed it, Chad. I think you were going to address it. Could you talk about the increase in other services and charges 22, 23, 24?
I did not connect that dot. Thank you. That is where our portion that will contribute to that new permitting system comes from.
Okay.
So
those are
we-
just
yes, we
capital
are the
expenditures for the software?
Yes, it's
Okay.
a pass-through from finance and IS.
Okay.
So that's where we go. And as we're the building and safety is the biggest user of the system, and so we kind of have the biggest piece of that pie.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have one question, Chad, and you may have addressed this as well, or maybe in some things John has sent us, but understanding that your funding comes from your fees, do you have the cost for the 3 FTEs that you'll be adding?
I don't have them broken out in this. I can certainly get that increase. Now, some of it, it's not a real specific calculation, because we've also had some 4 retirements that we have successfully replaced, but they're at the max of their pay range and have been replaced at much lower pay grades, and in some cases it's a different classification that will eventually be promoted to that upper class. So the costs don't exactly compare directly like that, but I can certainly get that,
Okay.
the difference if you'd like.
That'd be
So,
great.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for presenting.
Mhm.
All right, our next presentation is from Finance and Information Services. Welcome.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon all. I'm Melinda Jones, the Interim Finance Director, and I'm here to present the finance budget. And our finance budget is designed to support the mayor's vision of the biennium budget. Here's our mission statement. The finance department is a customer service-based department meeting many needs in our community and city operations. The finance department is made up of 6 divisions with their main goals here listed, as well as each of them provide customer service throughout their own operations. We, as you know, will have a new finance director starting Monday. And we've had 2 new division heads, one in purchasing and information services, where we have Abby today if you have any other questions on the information services budgets. The finance department budget is made up of, information services is made up of more than 70% of our budget. Other services and charges make up most of our expenditures besides personnel, and that other services and charges consist of largely software licensing and other IS contracts. Transfers here listed are primarily made of the Kino and the Broadband fund transfers. The general fund is the 16%, is the source of 16% of the finance department's budget. Here on this slide, you'll see that our taxes, we have a projection of decline. The general fund revenue projection reduction is due to mainly declining occupation tax that are going into the general fund. Reduction in the year 2 Kino revenue projections are due to the anticipation of the casino gambling that is forthcoming. Broadband and information services budget include funding for a replacement of a wireless system and a digital development services. Except for the transfers of full-time employees that we added from other departments due to the centralization of payroll a couple years ago, the general fund finance staffing levels have remained flat for decades. The city clerk and the city budget office have not seen an increase in over 30 years, while the population of our community has increased nearly 50%, and the city's total budget has increased 156%. In the 80s and the 90s, Microsoft and spreadsheets and the word processing capability, along with our new JDE financial system back then, and other technology allowed us, each employees, to be more efficient and effective. But in recent years, software and technologies have become more complex. Today's technology is requiring more resources for training and technical support to our customers. The complexity of this work increases the length and time it takes to train new city employees, and it takes quite some time before staff can get up to independent proficiency. In recent years, more service has become paperless and moved to online. The city clerk's office offers licenses and permits online. OnBase gives us an automated document routing and approval for our documents, and Granicus has automated agenda management. Additional staffing to our initial point of contact for the finance department will reduce interruptions for other staff in both the city clerk and the city treasurer's office, so they can boost their efficiency in these areas. The number of EOs and DOs they process have increased over 49% since 2001 to 2021. In the current year, the city clerk's office has been able to keep up to date with their transcribing of the city council minutes. As a result of these interruptions, and the staffing level isn't adequate to assist the customer service they provide. They're getting many phone calls on how to handle Granicus or OnBase, and so they're having to go through more training for these people or other employees. Purchasing staff has seen a 21% of solicitations since fiscal year 15-16. They now enter all contracts in a contract management system, the OnBase, and TRIM, as well as approve all Amazon purchases. These steps add 15 to 20% of the time necessary to process each contract. Insurance issues have also become more complex in the purchasing, requiring more resources. The implementation of the new Oracle HCM system has required additional staff to continue to has required additional staff support and will continue to require additional resources to fully utilize available features. Payroll has incurred many hours of overtime, many of them coming in over on the weekend. I don't think I've seen a weekend, very few weekends that I haven't had staff come in. They report to me when they're coming in, and there's been many times the entire team has had to come in order to make payroll or address the fixes and in order to meet payroll deadlines. Our OpenGov budget preparation and workforce personnel cost projection systems also have necessitated training and support of staffing preparing budgets in the outlying departments, as well as training for our own budget office staff, leaving little time for budget to analyze, monitor, and report budget activity. Record-setting development generates, as Chad had said, the setting development in the city generates additional bids and contracts that need to be processed through purchasing in the city clerk's office. We are investing resources in order to avoid delaying building and development. Investing in this additional staff will give us the tools to continue providing excellent customer service to our citizens, city departments, and our community partners. Here on the screen, we have listed where we are adding more of those positions we would like to add. So, new technologies allow our customers to receive city services wherever they are without having to visit a city office. We want to better utilize technology available and be proactive in providing data to make good decisions. We have an opportunity to work with staff in other departments as the conversion of the new JDE upgrade of financial system software is implemented to help them get the training and reporting tools necessary to utilize the data available. Also, as Chad mentioned, the Visual Vault, a new digital services portal, will allow customers to access development services across 4 departments within the next 18 months and will expand to other services after the initial deployment. Opportunities to streamline services and leverage more feasible features, including permits, currently issued in the city clerk's office. Low-code development allows us for quick deployment and easy scalable services for other city and county services. As we deploy more digital services internally and externally, we are investing in our digital infrastructure to support new expectations and to improve digital or cybersecurity. Our plan includes upgrading a wireless to the city and county facilities, addressing gaps that prevent staff from accessing the network. Increased network access for staff decreases the need to ledger off-network devices. Leveraging low-code workflow solutions and enhancing digital infrastructures allow us to scale other services to improve operations. Initiatives included in the Climate Action Plan utilizes a fleets manager to find innovative ways to operate more efficiently and lower our cost and reduce the city's carbon emissions impact. The fleet service manager will be addressed more in the mayor's budget as they discuss their climate action plan. We continue to be proud of our AAA bond rating and our GFOA awards in excellence in financial reporting. With record sales tax receipts in 2020-21, offset by other revenues coming in less than projections due to COVID influences, the general fund remained within the 3.5% of projections as we had planned. Miscellaneous budgets are not to one department, so we are manage some of those, along with other examples are the Community Health Endowment and Pinnacle Bank Arena. There are no significant changes in the non-general miscellaneous budgets. But within the general fund miscellaneous budget, we have set aside $1.2 million for each year for the 27th payroll that will occur in fiscal year 2027-28. $6 million is estimated for the city share of the tax-funded portion of that payroll.
Would you repeat that?
Sure.
Go back 2 sentences.
In the general fund, a part of the miscellaneous budget here, we're setting aside $1.2 million, or budgeting $1.2 million for each year for that 27th payroll period that will hit us in 27-28.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Finance Department delivers proactive and efficient customer services throughout many channels, including phone, email, face-to-face, chat, and many more options. We provide behind-the-scenes operations for support. When contractors want to get to work on a project, businesses need a permit or a license, we need the resources to provide fast turnaround and to support our private sector partners. Any questions?
Questions for Melinda? Yes, Councilman Raybold.
Thank you for coming down. The question is, so hiring more staff, it looks like you're going to hire 4 additional full-time employees. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
In 4 different divisions.
4 different divisions. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's besides the fleet service manager.
But I thought that's going to be presented in the mayor's budget.
Yeah, but there's more discussion on that. But that position will be in the finance department right now.
Okay.
I believe there's an ordinance that states is supposed to be held within the finance department. That's why you see it here.
So does that bring the number to 5 then?
It would bring it to 5 in finance, but that's the 5th one.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And then is.
Go ahead.
May I
Other
piggyback
questions?
on that?
Yes.
Same for the facilities manager then as well?
Yes, that's in year 2.
Okay.
I believe John will discuss that as well.
Okay,
In the mayor's
perfect.
budget.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions? I had a question too on the number of FTEs, and it may be in the information we have. Do you have a total cost of the breakdown of those 5 FTEs?
Again, like kind of what Chad said, we had some recent retirees. Our costs, it might be a little different. We'll have to, Sherry could get that back.
That'd be great.
We'll get that to you.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Again, we've had the same type of thing where we've had retirees at the highest level, and we were able to bring new staff in at a lower level. So we'll
Okay.
have
The
savings
differences.
there as
Yeah.
well. So
Okay, that'd be helpful. Councilwoman Washington?
Add on to it, if you could break it down between the cost of the general fund employees being added, separate from the cost of the other funded.
these
Yeah, like,
is fleet service, which wouldn't be a general fund.
It is currently budgeted in the general fund, but as we get up and running, it will have revenues from the people that it serves.
Oh,
as
yeah.
well.
But the rest should be general fund
At this point.
at this point.
oh, okay.
We can break them all out by funding source.
We could do that. Yeah.
Councilman Beckius?
Would it be fair, just because I'm noticing a trend here, to have that exercise done for every new FTE?
I have asked for that a
Okay.
couple weeks ago as these were presented, and so I don't know if that's happening or not. So far it's not. So, yes, to answer your question, for all departments, I was interested in total number of FTEs, cost despite attrition or retirements. So that is something that I've been asking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
One more
I'm
question.
Assuming Sherry's taken note on that.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. So, and this may be for Mr. Carlson as well, on the fleet manager position, has that been hired?
No.
Okay, okay.
No.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I think planning is up next.
All right, Director Carey.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon, members of the council. Thank you for some time today. David Carey, Director of the Planning Department. Provide you some information and then certainly answer any questions you may have. And if we need to, we'll follow up with you afterwards as well, like we've been talking about. I'd like to start out by saying that the budget outcomes that are our goals for the department are wide-ranging, and they match a lot of what the mayor's budget has in it in general. And that's appropriate because the planning department does a lot of interaction with several different, if not all, different departments of the city. So everything from working with departments on the CIP and our comprehensive plan, which is the long-term vision for our community. We have input and work on a lot of different areas of the budget, whether it's indirect or direct. It's something that we are very proud of, and it is part of our job. Specifically, our mission statement, when we look at that, it is one that really works at making sure that the growth and development of our community is high quality, efficient, and making sure that we're serving the needs of both our customers and through applications as well as the public at large. That is our main thrust of what we do and what we want to try to continue to do and do it well. A lot of the basic requirements and the work that we do is based on the city charter, so we make sure that we are doing that work well. We take it very seriously. It is something that's basic to the workings of the city, so we want to keep working on that and do as best as we can. I'll point out that we are a city and county department, so we do the work for the entire county, not the individual villages and cities. They have their own jurisdictions, but we do coordinate with those entities as well. So we do work with you all, obviously, as well as with the mayor, as well as with the county board. So that is kind of the main efforts that we have put together here. We have an administrative arm, and within that, we do a lot of the operations of the department. Budget work clearly is part of that responsibility. But we also make sure that we're staffing the 10 different boards, commissions, and committees that we have that we work with on a regular basis. So we're very busy all the time to make sure that that work that we're responsible for gets done. We're broken out into a development review section that has the ongoing day-to-day projects come in, applications come in. We process those and make sure that they're following the rules and regulations and getting to the answer yes as much as possible for all those applications. And then the other part of our department is the long-range planning, which is where the comprehensive plan work is done, the capital improvements program work, which is obviously part of the budget this cycle as well. So we make sure that we are doing all the different pieces and parts of our responsibilities well and consistently. And with that in mind, we do have some outcomes, goals, and performance measures that we continually track. I just want to point these out to you today that as far as the budget is concerned, these aren't the only things that we measure ourselves against, but these are some basic items that give us some idea of how we're doing. One of those is the maintaining at least 60% of our travel time to work at less than 20 minutes. It's not that we are necessarily a 20-minute city, but we want to make sure that we're able to get around our city, and for a basic need like getting to and from our work, I want to make sure that it's as efficient and livable as possible. And I'm happy to say that we're continuing to do that. As of the 2020-21 reporting cycle for ACS through the census, so over 62% do meet that goal of our travel time to work. Another one to look at here is lot supply. We want to make sure that we're trying to have at least a 10-year supply based on our recent trend in growth and development. I'm happy to say, despite having the last 3 years being very busy as far as construction is concerned, we have a 15-year supply at this point in time. So we have a healthy supply of lots, so our plan is in place to work, and our plan is working. We see a lot of development and growth happening. Another one to point out here is our final plat reviews. This is the initial review that we conduct and get into the process for review by other agencies, making sure that the application is complete so that we can move forward. We did that last year at 100%. We had a lot of them, 144. That's a big number for us for final plats. We're seeing that similarly this year, but we're able to get that into the system, make sure that it's a complete application and going forward. Doesn't mean the final plats are done in 20 days. I wish I could say that. But the process is that we control is kicked off in an efficient manner, so we're happy about that. And then finally, I want to point out the ratio of median price of existing homes to median family income. We compare this to the national rate just to give you some idea of how the affordability is going for us. We continue to be a very quote-unquote affordable city as far as housing is concerned compared to the national rate. It does not mean that the costs aren't going up. They are going up here as well. Interestingly, both the national ratio here and the Lincoln ratio both went up 21% over the same time period. So it's nationwide, but it's happening here as well. But we started with a more affordable situation, and so we continue to have that benefit here locally. This information about our applications is meant to make sure that we are all aware that we are very busy. We have been very busy for several years now. We have been averaging 476 applications into the planning department, and that's all applications. That's everything from an administrative amendment all the way up to a very large use permit with a large subdivision of land. 476 is a very big number, and we're averaging that for 7 years. The prior 6 years to that was more than 100 less than that. So the time period of the last 7 years has been a heightened level of activity. This current year, it looks like we're going to go over 500. So that gives you an idea of how busy things are. It's a good thing. We have been stressed at times to get the work done efficiently, but we're doing that work. It has been mentioned earlier, Chad mentioned this in his presentation, for overall building permits. We highlight the new residential unit construction permits that come through. That gives us an idea of how much growth is happening, how much development's happening. Last year we had a record almost 2,300. That's the highest it's been since 2003, so it's not an all-time record, but it's the highest since that point. This year, in 2022, we actually are at 1,400 units already through 5 months, which if you extrapolate that out, that would put us at about 3,000 for the year. I don't think we're going to get to that level, but it's looking like we're going to go above the 2,300 that we experienced last year. So that is an indicator of significant growth and development happening in our community. Within that, we want to point out that the growth and development is being seen in the population increase. We did grow last year from the 2020 census to July 1st of last year. We grew by about a 0.5 percentage point, which is a little bit slower than what we normally do. We're usually around that 1% per year. That actually was seen across the board for any county in the state of Nebraska that has any large city in it. We are actually one of only 2 counties that actually gained population during that same time period that had any significant population in it. Sarpy County is the only other county that grew more than us. Just want to point that out so that we feel good that in a year that we had some kind of strangeness happening with the COVID pandemic having an impact on growth in cities. I will also point out that the city of Omaha actually lost population during this time period, and the Douglas County itself was kind of flatlined. They stayed at the same number. So having that experience, seeing different places that either didn't grow at all or lost some population, feel pretty good about that. Annexations are very consistent, about 1 square mile per year. We continue to see that happening. I'm also happy to say that our physical footprint of our city is growing slower than the population. That's usually a pretty good indicator of being efficient with our growth, so we feel good about that. And infill continues to be about 1/4 of all of our new residential growth. That's a 25% average for the last 5 years, so that's not just a point in time. That's the last 5 years, and that's why our new comprehensive plan expects that to continue at that rate. One thing I would point out with all this in mind of our growth and development in our city and for our department, we are proposing the one budget proposal and change is another round of increases in our application fees. The idea here is that we are seeing increases in costs across the board. Inflation obviously is something that everybody's dealing with, but we want to be able to meet the demands of growth and to make sure that we are providing the customer service that we have been able to do, want to continue to be able to do that. It's been mentioned by the previous 2 presentations, but I'll hit on it again. This funding helps us make sure that we're funding improvements to our project docs plan review system. We actually just did a update to that. We expect another update probably in 2023 or 2024. Also, the visual vault permitting system that is being updated, that is something that this additional funding can help with that as well, and we are part of that system, actively working on that right now. So with a 5% for the first year and a 5% increase for the second year, that will roughly match the 8.8% year-over-year inflation that we're experiencing in the Midwest region. That is as of May of this year compared to May of last year. We did have a 1.7% increase last year in the budget. We appreciated that. That was reflective of inflation at the time, so it's changed quite a bit in a year. But what that basically will mean, I just want to make sure you have that information to put some perspective into that. So a change of zone that is greater than 1 acre, right now, that application fee is $1,005. With a 5% increase in the first year of the budget, that would go to $1,055. And then the other 5% in the second year would be $1,109. That is to give you an idea of what that would result in. I don't stand here and say that that's not an insignificant amount for an applicant, but it's also reflective of the cost increases across the board and identifying some needs that we have for technology increases. I would also point out that if we did the 8.8% right now all at once, that would increase it to $1,094, so more than the 5% in the first year, but slightly less than what the second year would have in it. But we also would not be reflecting a second year costs of living increase either. So that's just meant to make sure that you hear those numbers so that you know what that means for cost increase for those applications. With that in mind, I'll quickly go to our FTEs. We're not asking for increases in our full-time equivalents. We did get one last year in the budget, and I appreciate your support for that. That was to add an administrative aide too. Again, that was meant to help us meet the demands that we are seeing because we have gone digital in almost everything that we do, and that's a very good thing for our applicants, and it's a very good thing for the public. Puts a lot of stress and pressure on our staff because we get more and more and more comments regularly. We have to process those comments. We are increasing speeds of getting things reviewed, which is a good thing in general. But this new position has helped us maintain our level of service, and we expect to improve on that going forward. So at this time, our proposed budget has 21 FTEs, which is the same as the current year. And despite the growth and development in our community, we feel like that number can still do the job very well. What that translates into is that we are a personnel-heavy department. We are a general fund department. I want to make sure that that's clear. So these are the numbers that we see. We see about a 3% increase from the current fiscal year budget to next year's. I will note, and I like to say this, that our revenues on the top side of that slide accommodate over 45% of our general fund costs. So we're not a fee-based department like building and safety is mostly, but we do bring in a lot of revenues, and those go right back into the general fund. So that's a good thing. So that's between our fees and charges, as well as intergovernmental agreements, whether it's federal funding or funding from the county. We do get over 45% of our costs effectively covered. So, looking back to this current year and in previous work, we've had a lot of successes. We're very proud of that. I like to think of our department as we might be small, but we're mighty. We have a lot of work going on. We do a lot of good for the community. I would start out by highlighting that high level of processing applications. It's been extremely busy. We're doing the work and getting it done efficiently. We had some big accomplishments. The 2050 plans were adopted last year. I thank you for your involvement and support on that. We also did redistricting for the city council and the county board, which is no really small feat, but we were glad to do that work. Feel good about that. The CIP that is part of the budget, as far as the capital budget is concerned, we accomplished that in the past year. And we also saw an update to the Project Docs plan review system, as I noted earlier. Looking forward to next year, we're going to continue to implement our plans and our regulations. We do and are experiencing and expect to continue to experience high levels of applications. We'll continue to do that work. There will be an annexation study coming up fairly soon. We're going to really begin the work over the summer, and then you'll see that coming forward to you in the fall. And then finally, we'd like to just point out that we are in support of getting the Affordable Housing Action Plan as well as the Climate Action Plan implemented in different ways that we can do that, whether it's directly through planning or in support of our other departments. And so with that, I will ask if there are any questions and try to answer them.
Any questions for Director Carey? Comments? I don't. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Next up, Director Pat Leach from Lincoln City Libraries. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you. As we begin thinking about the library's budget, I'll just note that a well-functioning public library touches on all of the goals of our city. In particular, the library applies to vibrant city economy and quality of life, as well as equitable and inclusive city. This is our mission statement. When we reflect on our mission, I often refer to the 3 L's, learning, literacy, literature, as what we're about. And certainly, as the years go forward, what those look like changes, how people engage with those changes. But the library is here to serve people's needs in terms of learning, literacy, literature. The library is a somewhat unusual department in that, excuse me, I answer both to the library board and to the mayor, which adds a couple of layers of interesting process, but it does mean that the library is very responsive to the needs of the community, and we keep that in mind as we operate. I also want to point out that 2 of our areas, the Poly Music Library and the Jane Pope Geske Heritage Room of Nebraska Authors, are funded privately. So their staff and their service is funded through private funds. For the most part, though, we are funded through taxes, and we're part of the overall city budget. It is interesting that the library fund is made up of city property taxes. And so you can see in this chart that that makes up 81% of our funding sources. And as part of the overall city budget, you know, we're part of the give and take of that budget process. I do want to note that we do receive county property tax through an interlocal agreement. We serve Lancaster County that is outside the city but within the city limits through an agreement with them. And then you'll also know that there's a pretty big chunk in here that is Kino Funds, and I just want to note the importance of those funds. We use them to keep up with demand for new materials for checkout, and we also use Kino Funds a lot to keep up with our technology, which we're updating all the time. So Kino is critical to us in terms of keeping up in that way. Then when we're looking at the expenditures, personnel is the primary expenditure for the library. When you see that piece there that is capital outlay and equipment, that's where our book budget comes from, books, CDs, as well as the electronic downloadable materials that we make available. So that's what that chunk is within this pie chart. It's interesting, within libraries nationwide, we're all addressing the issues of how to keep up with the public demand for downloadable materials, even as we maintain public demand for print materials. So it's a constant balancing act of how much do we invest in each side there, given what it is that our community and our customers will be asking for. Thinking about our FTEs and the upcoming budget, you'll see that in the current budget we have just over 105 FTEs, and we are adding 0.05, a half FTE in each of the fiscal years of the biennial budget. I will note, as we look at our FTEs, that the library uses a lot of part-time employees. So you'll see here that we have 105 FTEs. Right now we have 62 people who work full-time. So those remaining FTEs are part-time people. We need that in order to maintain a 7-day-a-week schedule and mornings into evenings. So part-time people are really important to us for that reason. As I noted, vibrant economy and quality of life, as well as equitable and inclusive city, are key to what we do. I will note that in supporting that equitable and inclusive community, one of our proposals is elimination of overdue charges on materials for adults. We eliminated overdue charges on materials for children in 2019. We do still charge a customer if an item never comes back. So we do still expect that someone will pay if an item doesn't come back. But I do just want to step back a little bit in thinking about overdue charges, in that we have always seen them as a motivation to return materials on time. And other cities have done quite a few studies on this, and they're really not the motivator that perhaps they once were. And in fact, then what they do is create a barrier so that people who maybe went through a rough patch, weren't able to return materials on time, then just don't come back to the library. So we see this as lifting a barrier, particularly among low-income people, and making sure that we are encouraging all families in Lincoln to be using the library. And then another practical aspect at this point is, as more of our, especially adult circulation has to do with downloadable materials, those do not have overdue charges. So little by little, we were seeing that portion of our fees decrease anyway. Thinking about what's within our capital improvements, within the rest of our operational budget, we're seeking 2 part-time staff, I mentioned earlier. One of those is within the northwest quadrant of town. Within the next year, we intend to be operating the Williams Branch Library in the Air Park area out of the new Air Park Recreation Center in Williams Library. So we're seeking an additional part-time person who can enhance the amount of programming that we can do there, and also make sure that we're strengthening our connections to organizations and entities within that neighborhood. And then also we're seeking a part-time staff person. These are both at public service entry level, because we will be buying new bookmobile vehicles and are seeking a model that probably will include 2 smaller vehicles that will be able to get in and out of more places, participate in more activities, and so we're seeking a person to enhance the services there. And the bookmobile is housed at Isley Branch Library, also in the northwest quadrant of town, so those will be centered there. And I will note that we have really good response to our programming and outreach there, so we're eager to be able to see that continue to grow. When we're thinking about strong and resilient Lincoln, improving customer service, we have a couple of what I would call inelegant projects coming up in our capital improvements plan. But you know, when you drive into a smooth parking lot, you'll be grateful that it's not the bumpy parking lot of the month before. So we are resurfacing parking lots at Gear and Bethany branches, and one of the elevators at Bennett Martin Library needs to receive some major work. So I will note the new central library in the capital improvements plan is showing as more than 2 years away in terms of funding, so not in this biennial budget. We are backing up, though, against the need for some maintenance in the Bennett Martin building. So you will see that within the capital improvements plan. In terms of our performance measures, I will note that COVID had really hit the library hard in terms of level of use of the library. So we're very pleased that this summer we have a full offering of programs and events as part of our summer reading program. For instance, we had one of our library nights at the Salt Dogs a couple weeks ago. Anyone who registers for the summer reading program gets a ticket to that game, and it was a marvelous turnout that night of families who came out to be part of that. But you'll see that one of our measures is the number of youth ages 0 to 17 who participate in our summer reading program. So we'll be looking at this year's numbers to see how well we are able to reach or aspire to our target. Then also maintaining per capita checkout rate suffered somewhat during COVID, so we're thinking that, again, a strong summer program and getting habits back into place for the library will make a difference there. One of the charts that I am not showing you this year that you might recall from previous years is that often we look at comparable cities to say what is their per capita checkout rate, and we tend to compare pretty well. However, that chart really does parallel what is the per capita support in each of those cities for library services. So we take a lot of pride in stretching a dollar pretty far, but we also realize that the overall amount of funding that we receive makes a difference in the services that we can offer. Then at the bottom of this chart is the number of bookings for our meeting rooms. We were not using our meeting rooms during COVID, and so we're in the process of reestablishing the use of our meeting rooms for neighborhood organizations and other similar types of groups. As I finish up, I want to say this is my last budget presentation for you all, in that I'll be retiring at the end of August, and I just want to say that really it's been my honor to be the library director in Lincoln, and I'm absolutely confident that you all will continue your support of Lincoln City Libraries and see the difference that we make. You know, we always have an eye to the future in terms of thinking what is important to our community now and what is it that we're perceiving will be coming up so that we can prepare for that. And I think the thing that has become more and more clear during COVID is the importance of community in what the library offers. So thinking about how do we connect people, whether that's with each other, connect people with books, connect families with the habit of reading aloud to young children, a very key component of a successful city overall, especially as we think, what does our future look like? It will rely on people who are able to succeed in school and life, and reading aloud to preschoolers is a big part of that. So I just want to conclude my portion by saying thank you for your service to the city, and it's been my pleasure to be working with you over the years, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Director Leach, for your service to the city and to Lincoln's libraries for so many years. And I'm sure it's not without bittersweet emotions that this is your last budget presentation, right? So any questions for Director Leach?
Yes.
Tom,
Maybe.
Councilman Beckius.
Maybe more sweet than bitter.
Yeah, exactly. No kidding.
Director Leach, so the elevator repair at Bennett Martin, is that the elevator that goes to 3rd and 4th? Or
I believe it is the 3rd and 4th.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so will it continue to bounce when you get to 4th floor, or?
It will continue to have you arrive safely at the 4th floor.
Okay, and then when you get to the 4th floor, Director Leach, because I hate to lose this institutional knowledge with you leaving, when do we celebrate the 50th birthday of the orange carpeting on the 4th floor?
Well, I could get into the weeds on that, Councilman Beckius. That part of the building was put in 1978.
Okay, so next year. Or no, we have 6
We have
years.
a few more years yet.
Okay.
We'll take very good care of it
next
until
year.
then.
Okay,
We will take
very
very
good.
good care of it until then. I would also salute the people who chose that carpet, which has lasted so long.
There's that. Yes.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Washington.
I have one budget question.
Mhm.
Michael's gone. All right, I have one budget question and one comment on orange carpet. When you have in the capital budget for replacing the bookmobile, are you looking at actually adding to smaller or actually really replacing the
We will
big
be
one?
replacing our large vehicle, so it is at the point of needing to be replaced. And at the time that we purchased that vehicle, sort of bigger was better in the bookmobile world. And what we're finding is that smaller, more nimble vehicles tend to serve maybe better because it allows us to get into more places. We have to spend quite a bit of time right now thinking, is there an in and an out, wherever we're going with a vehicle that size.
Okay. And then I would encourage you to think about replacing that 50-year-old carpet or 44-year-old carpet, because at 50, it's eligible for the National Register of Historic Objects. It's a thought.
I will make sure to leave a note for my successor to consider that. Thank you.
Other questions? Councilman Raybold.
Director Leach, of course, thank you so much for your years of service. I think our libraries are some of the best in the entire United States. So the question is on the Kino Funds. I know Linda Jones mentioned that they anticipate a decrease in the Kino Funds because of the casinos opening up. And have you factored that into your budget? Because I know the library gets a percentage and so does Parks and Rec, but.
We are aware that those changes will be happening, and we are watching and waiting to see what kind of impact that will have. But we are aware that the Kino, the share of Kino that we'll be receiving will be decreasing.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if Sherry can answer that maybe later on. Aren't we anticipating some additional revenue from the casinos, and how will that be distributed?
I can just quickly say that this budget does not yet include any projections of casino revenue. It's just too soon, kind of waiting for further guidelines from the state, but it's definitely something exciting to look forward to in our future, so.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Says the budget gal.
Any other questions or comments for Director Leach? All right,
Thank
seeing
you.
none, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very, very much.
Oh,
Next up is Director Randy Jones, Department on Aging.
you're welcome.
Welcome, Director Jones.
Thank you. Gosh, I hate to hear Pat say that. I'm going to miss some of my colleagues that are retiring. They're good people. Okay, let's talk about the Department of Aging and Aging Partners. To simplify our mission, our goal is to make sure people are living independently, older adults, to the level of independence that they wish. Maybe that's in a home, maybe it's in a care facility, but supporting them, supporting their families, and helping educate the community on how to go through some of these lifestyle changes. When we look at our sources of funding, we have quite a diversity of funding sources. Lancaster County 7%, general fund 46%. The state and federal funding, state through the Aging Services Act, and then our federal funding, which is Older Americans Act, represents 40% of our funding. And then we've got some small amounts. It doesn't, because that funding has remained rather stable, it doesn't allow us to make significant changes. But we did this last year, the state evaluated their funding formula, and it's going to have a 5% lift on us in terms of the state funding. That is directed towards direct consumer benefit versus administration. So that's real positive. The negative side of that is our colleagues across the state did not, with the exception of Omaha, did not have the same type of increases. And this was really an adjustment based upon population shifts in the state. We do see in here on the FTEs, there is a 1.5% increase. And basically what that is that with the help of the auditors, we identified that we were contracting with employees or contractors to perform services that were really described by Department of Labor as actual employees. So we needed to shift them into employee spots versus treat them as contractors. We didn't do that out of force from regulation or anything, but it's a proactive step we're taking. So that was a 1.5% shift. So we shifted funds out of contract services and moved them up to cover that additional personnel cost. Examples of those are our bus drivers for our paratransit vehicles and our nurses that do our foot clinics. To put in perspective the whole picture of aging partners, this budget represents $5.09 million of services. But in addition to this, Aging Partners has a responsibility to perform on a contract with the state of Nebraska to provide $2.9 million worth of Medicaid waiver services. So our actual department budget is the $5 million plus the 2.9. And this FTE count does not represent Medicaid waiver, which is an additional, this says 29, it's actually 28 additional FTEs. And that, that program is fully funded by the state. We also allocate administration costs, space costs, so it's helpful and beneficial to us because we can recover some of our overhead costs that way. Within the budget, you'll see, and I don't have it on the slide, but there are some modifications that we made to the budget, and there's 3 modifications I'd like to point out. One is a replacement of a paratransit vehicle, and this is part of our routine replacement practice. We've not had a routine in the past. We're starting one as of last year because we had vehicles that were rusty and not workable. So one is a replacement of paratransit vehicle. That's 80% paid by the state, 20% matched from the city. We plan on renovating the kitchen in the Northeast Center, Senior Center. That will be paid for entirely by donations. And then we also plan on implementing what's called a master plan on aging, which I'll share more details with you here in a couple slides. So what does the Department of Aging Partners do? What types of services does it perform to the community? What do these investments pay for? They pay for elder rights services, which includes our work with the Adult Protective Services and identifying seniors that are at risk of fraud or being taken advantage of. We provide support services for caregivers, both in some material items for caregivers to give care, but also in education to caregivers, and we function as, have a support group of caregivers. And as a caregiver myself, I can tell you this is a very important part of our work. Our nutrition services are some of the most visible, and those are the congregate meals that we provide in the senior centers and the home delivered meals that we provide through Tabitha, but also distribute ourselves. We've increased the Tabitha contract this next year because the trend line on the use of home delivered is going up. We provide evidence-based health education, so we are preventing people from falls, and that has a corresponding benefit to the family, but also to the city. When you look at the number of responses our fire department makes to falls, so that's evidence-based training. And then that next section in green is a lot of pieces, but this makes up a significant part of our work. Providing information to the public, supporting in-home services, that means financially purchasing some items to help make a home livable. Chore services are people that go into the homes to help clean the home, help make sure the home is safe. Transportation to our senior centers, case management, and legal services. There's quite a diversity of programming. So this year we have some real specific goals that we want to focus on with the budget. First of all, we are in the process of forming a new partnership, a new structure for our relationship with the Asian Community Center. Previously, we placed a city employee in the center to provide senior services. We're changing that and going to be entering into a contract with the Aging Center so that they can hire their own staff, but also propose a budget of services and programming that they have determined with their clients that they need. So it's really empowering the center to make some of their own programming decisions and then supporting them financially. Much of that financial support will come from federal dollars. That change is planned to occur September 1st. And the other is this master plan on aging, and I'd like to come before the council at a later date with more detail. But basically, this is a study of the Lincoln-Lancaster County area on what the needs of seniors are in our community. As we see the lift of number of seniors growing, what are the impediments for them living independently? This is a community engagement process. We also involve our partners in planning, urban development. This can involve all areas of the community, from looking at sidewalks, looking at public support through utilities. It could be looking at medical access, and it can be looking at in-home services that we provide. But it really gives a local perspective, opposed to us guessing or based on history what we think our citizens need in terms of aging support. This really defines it and helps us be much more methodic and efficient in those services. We look at implementing that in the spring of 2003. We also see improvements, and I mentioned the enhancement of home delivered meals increasing. Congregate meals have stabilized. We're just seeing a return to the previous numbers before COVID. We expect an increase at Victory Park due to congregate meals. And our evidence-based health education is new programming to help prevent falls. So in the last budget cycle, you all approved a new FTE for us to help with casework. And the reason for that was because of delays in being able to get into people's homes. Our investments had not caught up with the increase in population. That investment decreased our wait times by 10 days. So significant impact in terms of our customer service to consumers. We were previously holding customer names in our information referral lines because there was a backup in casework. They are now able to distribute those cases on a 2-day time period. And we continue to get customer feedback on the impact of our services, and we're looking at shifting some of the measures from the measures you're going to look at here in a couple slides to outcome measures, and we're working with the mayor's office to do that. But we boast that 95% of our clients report that their services have had a positive impact on their lives. The national average is 83.
Hey, Randy, could you advance your slides through the...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, you're fine.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So here's an update on Victory Park. Again, we do not expect closing any senior centers except the downtown location. We expect that population to be assimilated into Belmont, the near south, and then also to Victory Park. Transportation will be provided from door to the center. We have 2 bus lines into Victory Park. It will have a new health center with actual classrooms. We don't have classrooms across the street. It will improve access for people with mobility challenges. Centralized services, I see employee satisfaction improving because they will have parking. And the site and the plans really respect the value of seniors in our community. The O Street property is going through that process. It was reviewed by planning on June 8th and should be up for sale to the public very shortly. We expect that move to be November 1st. The other centers will remain and transportation will be provided. I won't go through all these metrics. specifically, but I will mention that two key goals is to maintain that customer satisfaction, but we're also, as we see the city population increase, we're struggling to reach the percentage of seniors in our community. Our goal is that we want to progress towards 50% of all seniors who are at 150% of poverty to be served by us. That's those that are living in their homes. And we're struggling to maintain that as the numbers increase. Our goals for this budget is 44%. There's a chart we've shown in the past about our increased numbers. And the top portion in the light blue is 85 years and over, and this is the population that demands the greatest services, and that is seeing the most increase of all the ages. And I'd like to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Director Jones? Or comments?
Looking forward to the master
Yeah.
plan.
Thank you.
I have just a couple.
Exciting.
No one else, are you good? I just want to make sure I understand the transfer of the 1.5% increase in FTEs.
Yes.
First of all, you have no new FTEs to add, is that correct, for this year? For this
Compared
budget
to
process?
last year,
Yes,
it does increase by 1.5.
because of the transfer of contractual employees to employees.
Employees, that's correct.
So do they become employees now? You gave examples of nurses that
Yes.
give the foot. So before, if I were a nurse doing this under contract, now I'm treated as an employee
That's correct.
instead. Same with some of the bus drivers.
Yes,
But
and that's it's an unclassified position, which
Mhm.
is a no benefit position, and because it's so seasonal and their hours are not committed to on a weekly basis.
And I assume that they had preferred to be contractors anyway, perhaps, some of them,
I
like
didn't
retiring.
ask.
Okay, so that's fine, yeah. I was just curious.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's
this-
the only, yeah.
This move was really based on the need to conform to Department of Labor standards.
Correct,
Yeah.
all right, very, very important.
Yes,
Very good. So that's the only increase that you're showing for FTEs,
correct.
is that transfer.
That's correct.
Thank you for that.
Thank
And then I was curious, and maybe you don't know yet on your master plan how you, it's not budget related, but how you plan to administer that through, or how you plan to get there through consultant help, through
Sure.
internal, or how do you
So
see that happening?
Very high level. What other states and communities have done is brought in a consultant to lead community engagement discussions on various topics to help identify priorities, and also to do research to gather information that's already been maintained, so we're not doing the same thing. And then through that engagement, the next step is to have a group of volunteers that will help define what those priorities look like, what our goals should be in the future. That's in the first year. The second year, we would hire a part-time employee to help with implementation. I don't want a plan that sits on the shelf. I want to actually
Sure.
put it,
Implement
move
it.
it forward.
So I guess part two is budget related. Do you have a budget for the master plan and implementing it?
The modification, I believe, is at $100,000
Okay,
between the 2 years.
okay, very good. That's
Yeah.
all I have. Anything else?
And the
Yes.
100,000 includes the part-time employee for implementation.
Correct.
Okay.
And it'd be a contractor,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
if Department of Labor defines it that way.
Careful, careful now. All right. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none. Thank
Thank you.
you very
Appreciate
much,
it.
Director Jones. All right. Now we are scheduled for a break. Would you like to do one from 2:15 to 2:30 or keep moving ahead or otherwise? Do you have a preference, John, how we do this?
A little flex time, but our people were extremely punctual.
Yes, so that's great.
I see that city
Okay.
law is here.
Yeah. Should we,
Ten-
would you like to do, do you have a preference?
Come back in 15 minutes and go.
Sure, sure.
10.
Sure. Okay, let's reconvene at 2:25. All right. Thank you. Shall do that. Right. Stretch. Stretch. Starting with our city attorney, Mr. Johann C. Christie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take it away, if you would.
Chairperson Ward, City Council, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. It is my honor and privilege to be able to talk to you about the law department this afternoon. We get to do this.
Thank you.
First off, oh, that was not at me. Okay, I'm sorry. First of all, we touch all of the outcomes at the law department. I think that we, as you know, we work with and support all of the departments and everyone working for the city. Our mission statement, which I am not going to read to you, but we'll just highlight that: provide a high level of professional in-house legal services. Thank you. And our primary programs are general legal services to the city, which takes up a huge majority of our time, but also includes prosecution and the administration of the Lincoln Commission on Human Rights. And you can see our 3 divisions listed there as well. This is our org chart. Breaks down the 3 divisions even further, lays out in more detail and lists the individuals in each department. We have 29 FTEs in the city law department. And I think on the next slide goes into more detail. Here you can see what supports our work, the funding sources, primarily general fund. As you are aware, and I think understand, we are heavy personnel, which is consistent with any, I think, law department, whether government or private practice. This breaks down our funding sources in more detail, breakdown of our revenue and expenditures. I think that it is fairly straightforward. Some things that you might have questions on, the intergovernmental line item, I believe that is the West Haymarket JPA, the arena, and then the PBC, Public Building Commission. And then if we go down to other services and charges, most of that are things that we do not have control over, that are billed to us, like liability, workers' comp, rent, parking fees, those sort of things, kind of costs that, again, we have no control over, but we were told here's what is allocated for those services. Generally, this is what we provide. However, this does not cover everything that the city law department does. Everything that happens in the city comes through the law department. So it's very hard to put on one slide to capture everything that the law department does, but this is kind of big picture. And if we look at the prosecution division, that first bullet point right there, immediate accessibility. I believe that I have talked about this before, but one of the things that is very unique about our prosecution division is that someone who receives a ticket, they can come in immediately and talk to our prosecution staff. A lot of the individuals in the community that will get involved with the prosecution division are unrepresented. And that's just the nature of the charges and the violations that happen within city code, right? Not felonies, no prison time, nothing like that. And so again, they're unrepresented, and so that immediate accessibility is something that I'm very proud of, and something that I think the community expects, and that they have become used to over the years. We always have people staffed at the front, open door policy, people can come in. Prosecutors only prosecute, so we do not have prosecutors dealing with any of the civil legal services. They only prosecute. A lot of them have been with the city for some time, but by only having them prosecute, we believe it provides helps them provide just prosecution in an efficient and productive manner. I have vertical prosecution on there. This is actually a change that we implemented. I should have a hybrid vertical prosecution, but traditionally we had prosecutors essentially assigned to courtrooms, and so whatever prosecutor that you dealt with, it would depend on whoever was assigned to the courtroom that day. Now we have vertical prosecution. The reason I call it a hybrid is we are now assigning cases from the beginning, and vertical prosecution means from the beginning all the way up. Basically, they handled the case from beginning to end. We're not assigning all of the cases, but there are some cases, our more serious cases, that we are assigning to prosecutors. The idea of that is victims, witnesses, officers, defense attorneys, everyone involved in the case talks to one prosecutor, not multiple prosecutors. The goal is to provide a better service to the public. Everyone knows who's handling the case. So,
And those are assigned based upon?
So we have a structure where there's a charging decision. So tickets come in and prosecutors will look and decide, whether to charge cases, and then depending on the type of charge, it'll be assigned. Now we keep track of, who has this type of cases versus, we don't want to overload someone on only disturbing the peace or only DUIs as an example. So we distribute it fairly, but it is just based upon the actual charge that was charged. Lincoln Commission on Human Rights. We have more on this on some later slides, but just to touch on it briefly. The main service is the neutral mediation, investigation, fact-finding, and conciliation and discrimination complaints based on employment, housing, and public accommodations within the city. The Commission on Human Rights also provides education and training in the community as well. And we'll have more on the Commission on Human Rights in a little bit. Civil Division, again, this is a general overview, and it's very, very hard to include everything that we do at the law department. However, when we talk about the record-setting development, we must include the law department in that as well. Law department is a necessary component for the record-setting development, whether that's redevelopment agreements, project negotiation, all the necessary legal components that go into all the development that we are seeing. As I stated at the outset, we are in-house legal counsel for the city. It is very hard to capture the value of that. I would submit to you that in a lot of ways it is invaluable, and by invaluable, I really mean it's very hard to capture the true worth of having in-house legal counsel. But to touch on a couple things, first, I'm not going to go through all of them, but strong internal knowledge of city government. I would just point out that as in-house counsel, lawyers at the law department really have a superior understanding of just how city government works and the things that are needed to move things forward and get things done. Continuity of service. There's a lot of institutional knowledge, and we have access to institutional knowledge. We have the records, have access to the records. We know what was done before, or we can look into it. Strong relationships. Relationships matter. We're able to anticipate and be more productive. Accessible and responsive. I think that this is very difficult to quantify, but generally speaking, we're available. Whatever the issue is, business hours, all the time, we have attorneys available to answer questions. And I'm just generally always available. The other thing I do want, we have centralized focused legal services, and I think we all understand this, but I just do want to point out, we have lawyers that are assigned to departments, right? And so we, do believe that allows us to be more productive and helpful to the city and to the departments. The diversity of legal issues that the city deals with really are vast, right? And so having go-to attorneys for each department, again, we believe really helps us be efficient and help the city in the best way possible. So already kind of touched on prosecution, but you can see that in there as well. And again, the vertical prosecution is a hybrid. We're not assigning all the cases. And I didn't pick that color, but you probably can't see the number, but it is in-house. We have 146 billable hourly rate, and then the basic private sector is 250, and then specialized private sector is 300. This is kind of a average that we were able to come up with. It's very difficult to quantify the hourly rate for us, but we do have a way that we are able to come up with an hourly rate, and we do factor in overhead costs and those sort of things. It is a formula. I can send it to you. It's kind of a well-accepted formula that has been used in other arenas as well. But we do try to factor in all the other hidden costs as well. This is a comparison of the hourly rate by state. 146 is the law department again, and then on the left side is the high. I think that's DC market at 340, although I am aware of attorneys in town charging that as well. And then going back to the 146, if you go to the right, that's just the surrounding states. Iowa, South Dakota, Missouri, Colorado, and then we end with Nebraska at 212 on the right. Just kind of a comparison. Now, when we look at our performance measures, I've already touched on the first one, in-house hourly rate less than the private sector. The second measure, this is for the Commission on Human Rights, and we have maintained on-time case turnaround 67% of the time. And you'll see that we're at 35%. However, I do want to point out that our goal is fair resolution to discrimination complaints. And so I don't believe that this maintained on-time case turnaround truly measures the good work that the commission does, and it doesn't really capture, it's not the best way of capturing our goal. And so we are working on that. I think, as you may recall, we just had a recent director. This is her week anniversary, so she's been here 1 week. Her and I have talked about this. Probably actually talked about it in the interview process as well. But we have talked about this. We have already brainstormed ideas, and we're working on a better way to capture, a better way to measure our goal. One of the things that doesn't include in that time frame would be the time that it takes to negotiate a fair resolution, right? And so if the case pauses while we do that, then we're not capturing the end result, which might be a fair resolution. So we gotta work on that. The third measure down there, safe and healthy city, maintain a low crime rate. We have actually changed this measure to conviction integrity rate, and that's you might not remember, but we've always traditionally, and a lot of prosecution offices across the country have always used conviction rate. And so with the conviction rate, you're just looking at charges that are filed, and then what is the percentage of conviction from what's filed. We have shifted that to looking at conviction, what we're calling a conviction integrity rate, which is focus on whether or not convictions have been overturned. So the idea of that would be to focus on the quality and not the quantity. So we're trying to, again, shift the focus to keep track of, cases that are appealed or otherwise complained about. What is our percentage of those cases that are being overturned? We still, of course, keep track of the conviction rate as well. the Lincoln Commission on Human Rights. You see the mission statement: present, respond to, eliminate all forms of illegal discrimination. Those two program areas are the main program areas for the Commission on Human Rights. Again, we have those two areas on there. Again, I do just want to point out we have this annual regional civil rights conference on there. That is something that the Commission on Human Rights has been putting on for several years. It is regional. This last conference, I think we had around 200 people. We had people come from Omaha and other areas outside of Lincoln. We also had a pre-conference where we were able to provide education and training to lawyers and others who are involved in this area and who are working on preventing discrimination in our community. We also were able to bring in a national renowned speaker who did a very nice job. And we will be letting you know about the next conference sooner rather than later. We're working on that. I do want to touch on a couple other things with respect to the Commission on Human Rights. This is what we're calling Career Ladder, and this is one of the projects that the Commission on Human Rights is working on to help foster an equitable and inclusive community. There's really three areas of the Career Ladder that we're working on. The first one is the pathway guides. And the idea here is to help skilled immigrants re-enter their former careers and focus on engineering, nursing, law, accounting, and education. And these are areas that we found were very difficult for skilled immigrant professionals to transition into. And so the focus, again, is on those 5 areas. My City Academy is really focused on civic engagement. It's a leadership development program. The more civically engaged we are, our community members are, then the better we are, and the more likely our neighbors will be successful in our community. So that is the focus of that program. Connectors program, we're still working on that and getting this off the ground, but the idea of this is to connect people. Relationships matter, and obviously connectedness also helps us be successful. So connecting some of our skilled immigrant professionals with other established professionals in their area to help them network. One other just area I wanted to point out on the Commission on Human Rights is you've heard about the Tenant Assistance Project, which often referred to as TAP. That is still going on, launched in April of 2020 in response to COVID-19 related housing insecurity. I want you to know that this is still going on. It's a collaboration between multiple community partners. You can see some of them listed there. They're volunteer attorneys with tenants, providing representation. We are the Commission on Human Rights. We have trained human rights coordinators that are able to help tenants obtain immediate access to the city's rental assistance fund. So we're very involved in that as well. I have it's well over 350 households at this point. That's a really it's a number, I think, from a while back. So it's well over that. But that is still ongoing. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Here is the organization chart for the Commission on Human Rights. If I didn't mention this before, you can see that a lot of the positions are grant funded, and so through the federal government, different programs. So it is not, the Commission on Human Rights is not entirely funded through the general fund. You can see the mission again, and then you can see the mission for the Commission on Human Rights, and then the Law Department, and then questions on either or both. I'll be happy to do the best I can.
Questions for our city attorney on either presentation? Councilwoman Washington.
I just have one question.
Okay.
Is the Commission on Human Rights, is it fully staffed? Are all of these positions filled?
Yes, although the intake rep, EEOC intake rep that is listed on there, that is not happening right now. And the main reason for that really is that they were unable to physically come into the office right now, and so we weren't sure with having them remote, having them work remotely, how they could help us with the intake process. But that is still a possibility. So we do not have that person working with us right now. The career ladder fellow and human rights law clerk, yes, we have the other positions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments for our city attorney? Seeing none.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh,
Thank you.
Tom, Becky,
I'm
yes.
sorry, I did have a question for you, Mr. Christie.
Yes.
On page 146 of the budget packet, could you look at page 146 and just take a peek at the FTEs from year to year to year? Because some of your numbers have changed. For example, Attorney 2 has gone from 2 positions to 5, so on and so forth. I just want to make sure that those numbers still align.
So I will look at that. I will grab that in a second. But with the Attorney 2, a lot of that is based upon experience. And so,
Sure.
so we, I think a couple things happen with having some attorneys that have worked there for a while. Some of them transition, I think, into Attorney 2. And then when we were hiring recently, we ended up hiring some at Attorney 2 as well.
Okay.
But I will look at, thank you so much.
146?
Yes. And then I don't know whether, I mean, looking at senior attorney, we've had 2 senior attorneys retire, actually.
Sure, I see that number.
And so
went
that
down.
takes us down.
Yep. Yep.
And then, let me go. if I'm-
My math could be off, but I don't think FTE 2022-23 adds up to 32.85. Just curious. I mean, this is a minor
Okay.
detail, but
I will be happy to provide more clarification, follow-up.
thank you, Mr. Christie.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments at this point? Thank you, Councilman Beckius, for that. All right. Thank
Thank you.
you, Mr. Christie, very much. Mayor's office. Mr. Carlson.
Hello. John Carlson. I'm appearing today as Deputy Chief of Staff for the Mayor Gaylor Baird's office. I'm happy to present on Mayor's Department, our mission statement, leading Lincoln to a more successful, secure, and shared future. And we are proud to help support a city team that is helping to grow that safe and successful city, along with City Council, and happy to be involved in the budget preparation that's making those investments. Sort of a flow chart here, kind of 2 main branches. We have city communications, and Diane's here to talk a little bit later. And we have our workforce, or WIOA, a branch that does the workforce training. Then we have the focus areas for the initiative. So in addition to supporting the individual departments and the great work that they do, we have some specific work that gets done, and then some specific focus initiatives that I'll talk a little bit about too, and then invite some folks up from our department to talk about that as well. Our funding source is primarily general fund, although I would draw your attention to the WIOA fund, which is federal monies that flow through the state and then flow into the city. And then those are used, you can see in the expenditures, other services and charges. That's primarily then contract services back out through WIOA for the program partners to do the training and the job education and the workforce skills development that happens through WIOA. Kind of focusing on some of the initiative work that we do, and some of that relates then to the specifics of this particular budget, The Lincoln Forward is really our economic development, community development focused initiative. And a lot of the work that we do there, as you well know, we do in partnership with the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce through the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development. The funding for that continues to happen. For the people watching on TV, that's our public-private collaboration that does business development, retention and expansion, entrepreneurship, talent strategy recruitment here in Lincoln. That's been a very successful model that's gone on for decades here in Lincoln, that provides the development on the partnership on the private side, that works in partnership with our workforce and our WIOA training on the public side, which is also a partnership. So it's a nice cycle there to help grow the economy in Lincoln. A new item that's in our budget now that we've talked about a little bit with council in the preparation of the budget is the notion of adding an economic development specialist to really do sort of project navigation. We're riffing a little bit off an idea that Omaha has, where they have someone positioned in the mayor's office and through community development to help do project navigation. We are proud of our departments and the way that they collaborate and the way that they work together. We want to have great customer service for when people come in, but we think adding an additional layer of project navigation can be really helpful in helping to get questions answered and helping to have single points of contact to get people moved through the systems on particularly complicated items. And then particularly in terms of affordable housing and making sure that we're elevating those and solving problems and removing any barriers to projects that may come forward with that. Third bullet is talking a little bit more about WIOA and the workforce training that happens, which I mentioned before. And then also mentioning that it continues the Ticket to Work program that was stood up last year. That's a successful example through the WIOA program to get residents with disabilities, get them connected to job opportunities too, so they can fully participate in the community. Another initiative, our Resilient Lincoln initiative, helping grow a strong and resilient Lincoln and helping to implement some of the strategies in the Climate Action Plan. As you know, our lead, Mickey Esposito, took a job opportunity, a big step for her to be Assistant Director of Public Works in Los Angeles County. But as we engage in the search for her replacement, we are continuing to support those goals and strategies. We've engaged in some contract work with Jamie Carsons from Carsons & Co. Global to help us continue to move forward. And we're continuing to provide additional funding in this budget. One of the things specific to fleet, one of the nice things about us being a larger organization is that we can make impact on the community through how we manage our fleet, how we manage our buildings. So not only providing leadership as an example, but providing real savings that we can show in action how that helps. And so at the moment right now, we have an administrative regulation that directs our departments when they go out to purchase new vehicles to research hybrid vehicles, to research electric vehicles and alternate vehicles that will fulfill that mission to deal with fuel savings and maintenance savings costs. And they are increasingly able to find those vehicles that will fulfill that mission in those alternate fuel streams. What we've done in this budget now then is put an increment of funding into that fleet services funding. So if there's a gap between that funding, if the electric vehicle, the hybrid vehicle has a marginally more expensive cost, we want to fund that. Because what we've seen in our analysis is over time, you get payback from that. You get payback from that in significant fuel savings, you get payback from that in maintenance savings too. So we want to continue to incentivize transferring over to those lower fuel usage vehicles and those lower maintenance vehicles. Similarly, we're looking to create a fleet manager, which we talked about briefly, that will be located in the finance department. In the city structure, as opposed to the state structure, we don't have a Department of Administrative Services. So the finance department sort of ends up being a little bit like the Department of Administrative Services in that they have IT and they have some other multi-departmental kind of foundational services that they provide. So the fleet services manager would be located in the finance department, but would work hand in glove with the three main divisions that coordinate fleet right now. So right now we have our fire department fleet, we have our LTU fleet, and then we have police garage. And the police garage is not just police, however. The police garage is really all the rest of the light fleet that's not covered by either the fire department or LTU. We have great division managers that work in those fleets right now, but we think there's going to be a great enhancement if we're able to create a person that can create coordination and alignment. So when vehicles are going out and being purchased, they're being purchased in bulk. The administrative regulation I talked about before is flowing through. Those purchases are being made, so we're getting the kind of vehicles we want to fulfill the mission and create savings. We also think there's an opportunity for that person to have the time. Division managers have their hands full making sure that the fleet is up and running and the vehicles are out the door and ready to go. Having some planning time in order to concentrate on how can we do system restructuring? Can we take more advantage of pool vehicles, for example? So for example, we don't have one, but it wouldn't make any sense to have a car that says mayor's department sitting down in the garage waiting for us to use it. Again, we don't have that, we don't want to have that. But as an example, taking more example of pool vehicles. You know you're going to have a use for a vehicle. We want to be able to stand up a system where you look online, you can check that vehicle out, you can go down, swipe a card, have the key, and go out and use that vehicle, and multiple people can use it. So trying to find more ways that will actually reduce the number of vehicles in the fleet. So trying to find ways that we can be more efficient and more coordinated through the use of an overarching fleet manager to help those 3 division managers do an even better job. And then we continue to work with LTO on infrastructure and policy strategies, again, that encompass stormwater protections, that encompass health department, encompassing climate change protections and heat protections, all the things that we're seeing in the climate action plan that are built, second water source. The ideas are going to help Lincoln continue to grow into the future. We want to make sure that we're making the same great decisions that people 50 years ago made in Lincoln, that created Lincoln and the great community it is today. We want to continue to do our part to advance those goals. And I want to ask TJ McDowell in our office to come up and talk a little bit about the One Lincoln Initiative.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. My name is TJ McDowell. I'm an aide to the mayor. Today is my 3-month anniversary in the role, leading the One Lincoln Initiative, the mayor's priority for creating a culture of equity, inclusion, and belonging in our city, and making sure that City Hall reflects and meets the needs of our diverse and growing community. So, second bullet, one of the things we want to make sure we continue to collaborate with community-based partners to enhance our support for immigrants and refugees. We want to continue to welcome our new neighbors into the social, economic, and civic fabric of our city. Third bullet has to do with our efforts to increase and promote city boards and commissions that advise the mayor and city council. And really, this is about expanding the table so more voices are included in the decision-making process in our city. The fourth bullet has to do with supporting and staffing our already existing committees, including Multicultural Advisory Committee, the Commission on Women and Gender, the New Americans Task Force, and more. So making sure that those important advisory committees have the support and resources they need. And the last bullet has to do with continuing our efforts to make sure we're building strong relationships between the city and our minorities communities to celebrate culture and contributions. I think many of us had a great example of that occurred this last weekend with Juneteenth celebrations and with Star City Pride, that were both great community building and belonging events for our community.
Good afternoon. I'm Diane Gonzalez. I'm the manager of City Communications, which used to be called Citizen Information Center, and we still get called that occasionally. We are, again, a division of the mayor's department, but we do work with all departments and divisions in city government. We are the direct communication link between city government and our residents. And our mission is to provide clear, accurate, and timely information in such a way that people know how to access city services and also know how to participate in city government, like coming to council meetings, that kind of thing. Some of our larger departments have their own public information people, but we coordinate all of those efforts. We coordinate with them on media relations and web content, social media, printed materials, and other things. With a few exceptions, all of the news releases come through City Communications. Over the past few years, of course, we worked very closely with the health department on all of the COVID briefings, and that work continues. Right now, we're planning one for this week on immunizing children, so stay tuned for that. A few years ago, we rebranded our government access channels as LNK TV to remove the channel numbers. We do operate 2 channels, a city channel and a health channel, and we also work with the educational community on the education channel. We do have funding from a variety of sources. Most of our operations, as you can see, this is a listing by FTE. Most of our funding comes from the general fund. We also have a cable fund, and those revenues come from the cable franchise agreements that we have. Those funds are intended mainly for equipment and capital operations, but we can use a small percentage for operations. So you'll see there the 0.25 is the cable fund amount that goes toward our operations manager, Bo Wolf. toward his salary. Our health channel began in 2011 as a grant-supported program, and although the funding has changed somewhat, it is still being operated as a separate account. We received some funding from the health department for this channel, and our coordinator, Melissa Fuller, spends some time 10 hours a week over at the health department to coordinate with them. I know you're familiar with Bo and Melissa. You see them quite often. We have added a third member to the team starting this week, so you'll know more about that shortly. The rest of our staff is John Taylor, who handles a lot of writing duties, a lot of press releases. And we do about 60 news releases a month, so that's about 720 news releases a year. And John Taylor is the one who starts most of those. Of course, Justin Komacher is our longtime web guru, and he handles all our web content. And then we have two newer staff members. Writer Jesse Storita just joined us, and Emily Haney is now doing our social media. So we have a total of 8 folks in city communications at the moment. I'm often asked about viewership on LNK TV. And while we aren't included in the ratings like the commercial channels are, we do have some ways to judge our viewership. A couple of years ago, as part of a performance evaluation of the cable companies, we did have a random sample survey conducted, and this was the consultant's conclusion. Lincoln's LNK TV City channel garners a significant viewership. Major networks see viewership of less than 30% on a weekly basis. Having 19% weekly viewership then is considered very healthy. Lincoln residents are definitely interested in and using LNK TV City. For the health and education channels, the report says their numbers also compare favorably to the many commercial channels and programs. We know that viewership on regular television is declining, so we have long focused on increasing our reach through the other ways that people are viewing video content now. All of our programs are available on YouTube. We do Facebook, video streaming, video on demand, and you can also find LNK TV apps on Roku and Apple TV and Amazon Fire TV. As you can see from the slide, we're producing a lot of new content. We've produced quite a few programs, hundreds of new programs over the past year. Our YouTube viewership has totaled more than 1.5 million. And we also have tens of thousands of viewers on our Facebook channel. This next slide gives you some idea of our web traffic, with 1.4 million users on our main site at lincoln.ne.gov. And we've also had over 800,000 views on our COVID site. That has gone down some since the peak of the pandemic, which is to be expected. Our social media numbers saw huge increases over the past year, over in 2021 compared to 2020. We now have a social media policy that is helping us coordinate and improve our social media efforts. And before I turn to questions, I think many of you know this, but I am retiring at the end of August. I started in December of 1998, and I was hired by Mayor Dale Young, who just passed away in March. So I've been very grateful to have been able to serve the city in this role. So I'll open it up for any questions.
Any questions for either Diane Gonzalez or John Carlson or TJ McDowell? Yes, Councilwoman Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one question for Ms. Gonzalez. I'm curious about the donation, the position that's funded by donation. I'm just curious, is that an endowed position or an endowed donation to the city?
As I mentioned, it started out as a grant-funded project, and then we've also been able to get sponsorships for that channel over the years. About a third of it now comes from our health department, and then the mayor's office is also doing a shift of funds from the general fund to that channel as well. So it comes from a variety of sources.
Okay.
Other questions for Ms. Gonzalez while she's up here? I just want to thank you for your years of service. I remember when you left the governor's office and came over to City Hall. So we will miss you, but you've earned your retirement. So
Thank you.
no, don't go too far. Yes.
I'm staying in Lincoln, so
Okay,
I'll
very
come
good.
to public comment.
Oh. Well, let's not get carried away.
Have you been saving up?
No.
Give it some time, okay? Just take your time. But
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any other questions for John Carlson or TJ McDowell? Yes. Councilwoman Washington.
Thank you. I have a question for John Carlson. All right. Just in looking at the FTE count, it looks like 2 FTE are being requested in the mayor's office, 1 for economic development, 1 for fleet management.
Right.
Is the economic development position general fund or grant funded?
General fund.
Okay.
Yes. Councilman Beck, yes.
And would you anticipate then, John, that facilities management in the following year
Right.
would be very similar in terms of nature and tone to the facilities, or excuse me, the fleet manager?
Right. But
Okay.
with regards to buildings, right? We certainly would want to coordinate with PBC, but the public may not recognize there's a significant number of city buildings that are not PBC managed. And so thinking about the MSC and libraries and fire stations and the other buildings, trying to create a coordination in terms of maintenance, in terms of energy use, in terms of reinvestment in those buildings, we see some real advantages there.
Okay. And like you said with the fleet management position, I'm assuming that you would also assume that a facilities manager would then also take some things off the plate of other department leaders and team members,
Right.
and free up their time for
Right.
other items. Is
Right, and create
that the
absolutely, and create
Grant, yeah.
greater coordination, particularly in terms of maintenance for buildings across different divisions.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions on this item? Because I have a question, if I may, on this issue with the fleet manager position. You know, I've been wondering about this for a long time, and I wondered the rationale. I know it's part of a climate action plan, but is this not more of something that falls in line with the purchasing director, purchasing department? Have we explored all the other options, I guess is what I'm looking at, because it creates another FTE. And
Right.
that's part one of my question. Part two is, what will this position be advertised at? What level of salary?
I could check with HR. It's a classified position, and so it's in the classified ranks. I can find out exactly what that position is, but it's going to be manager level.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly, I mean, purchasing certainly plays a role in that too, but I think really system development, system coordination may be even the bigger role. They wouldn't necessarily be going out and purchasing the vehicles themselves. They'd be working with purchasing in order to put up those qualifications together and make sure that there was alignment in those contracts. But I really think it's more about system coordination and trying to figure out what's the best way for these different platforms to align so that we are actually probably in the long run shrinking the fleet and making more efficient use of the vehicles that we have and the new vehicles that we purchase.
I guess I asked that because I just, based on my own experience over the years, like having been the person that would recommend either new positions or new processes,
Mhm.
make sure that we've looked at all the other processes of streamlining before just adding FTEs.
Sure.
And that's my concern over this position, and actually also over it while I have the microphone, but if somebody wants to chime in, please just say so.
Yeah.
With the economic development position, do we not already have that in the mayor's office? And then in line with that is the housing coordinator position, which I know the council is looking at,
Mhm.
not in tandem with the economic development coordinator position. When I started on council, and you will recall, I was looking at a housing coordinator position. COVID hit, budget went to heck. So I pulled back,
Mhm.
but now we're seeing that overlap. So I just want to see, are you coordinating with others that are interested in this position, like Councilman Beckius, on the housing?
That's absolutely our intention. That's one of the main reasons that it's included in the budget is the conversations that we've had during budget development to try and put an extra person in to specifically do that project coordination and have an affordable housing focus as well. And in terms of the fleet manager, I will say that the division managers right now of all of LTU, of fire, and of police, they've been involved in a months-long process that Mickey led to basically talk about how they could create that coordination. And so they're on board and understanding that overriding position would be the one that they would then coordinate with too. So it's been a multi-departmental kind of process to identify what the best system would be.
So my concern about having that position in the mayor's office is sustainability 15, 20 years from now, regardless of, we all know positions in the mayor's office are not the same as permanent positions in departments. And when we looked at this 3 years ago, before you were on council, Councilman Beckius, we were looking at putting it in a department. So
On the
that's
right.
out there.
No, absolutely. And I'm sorry, I keep talking about two things at the same time.
I
So
know.
the fleet manager would definitely be in the finance
Yep.
department.
Mhm.
But in terms of the project coordination, affordable housing coordinator, at the moment, that's in the mayor's office budget, but it certainly could be staffed. I mean, certainly could be conversations about, is it more appropriate for urban development? Is it more appropriate for planning? That conversation can certainly be had, 100%.
Yeah, I think that those will happen,
Mhm.
is my guess. So if that's, I just want to put that out there.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have any other comments? I have a couple of more, but not all. I'm not speaking on behalf of the council right now. This is just some other observations I had in terms of FTEs.
Mhm.
The total, according to the newspaper, was over 66 points. New FTEs in the city of Lincoln have been proposed.
Right.
I just need to say, so that we don't have surprises, and you and I have had this conversation, and I've been giving it a lot of thought as we've had information come in, and I just want my colleagues that I haven't spoken with to know that I believe it's a very expensive budget. It's a very expensive budget, and in some cases it's excessive. In some areas, to me, it's excessive, and so I just putting that out there. We are on the verge of a recession, and other levels of government, the county board, for example, are saying no FTEs, period. That's what they've told their staff. So I'm just putting that out there as a philosophy as we go forward that I maintain, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned, and that's why I kept asking today, how many FTEs in each department, what are they costing, and why are we doing them? And have we looked at every other way of doing business without just creating positions? So I just want to talk about that. And some of the directors today talked about inflation that we're experiencing, and that's why fees have been increased, for example, in the planning department.
Mhm.
And so I just want to put that out there philosophically.
Sure.
This is
And-
what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to have some pretty courageous conversations.
Well, and so in terms of our conversation, then I guess the reaction would be the philosophy behind what we're saying, and you heard several departments talk about it too, is trying to make sure that we're providing the customer service that's going to give the community and our private partners what they need. So that is an FTE count over the biennium. And I would also point out to folks too that the raw number can sometimes be misleading, and you need to look at it also in terms of over 2,000 city employees. And also I think over the progression of the city in terms of growth, because we also like to make sure that people point out, which was also in the paper, that in 2006, the city had 9.1 FTEs per 1,000 people in the community. And in this budget, we're proposing down to 7.8 FTEs in this budget too. So I think through technology, through strategic planning, through strategic investment, we are making great use of the resources that the community provides. We turn those into reinvestment then back into the community, and some of that does involve people. And so some of what we're looking at, a significant part of those positions that we're talking about are public safety positions, and we'll hear some of that here in just a minute when the fire chief is able to step up. But our commitment to public safety in terms of firefighters, in terms of police officers, in terms of dispatch, in terms of public safety and health, yeah, we are investing back in the community because the community's seen growth. In that time I talked about between 2006 and 2022, the city's expanded over 53,000 people. I mean, that's basically adding a Grand Island to the city of Lincoln. And so the fact that we're able to keep our FTE counts down as the city grows in terms of per capita, according to city growth, I think represents the conversation that we want to have is, are we wisely investing the resources, which is the question you're asking, and is 100% appropriate. And so we certainly want to get that data sliced down the way that you want it in order to do the proper analysis. But I do think that we would say that if you look at the budgets over the last 5 years, I would not argue that this is a robust investment. I would argue that it's an appropriate investment, and that the investment over the last 5 years basically amounts to about a 3.5% growth in that city budget. And I do think that when you make those investments in infrastructure and personnel, and when you see the economy respond, then we owe it to the people that have done that work to reinvest those resources back into the community in order to try and keep that economy moving along.
And I would say to all of that, this is almost a 7.5% increase over 2 years. I would like to see it more at maybe a 3-4% total increase.
Right.
I don't know that this is sustainable. When we are facing, the economy has responded, but we don't know what the next year is going to bring or the next 2 years. And we do know, however, that people are still scrambling in their businesses and government, other levels of government. And I don't know that it's appropriate for us to come back this aggressively. That's my view. It just doesn't, you got to do the gut check. That's mine. I've been in government my whole career, 30 years. That's what I'm feeling. And I'm telling you, that's what I'm looking at. And so I think we owe it to the taxpayers who are giving up a lot in their businesses, in their homes, with their families, and now, and it's like that broken record of gas prices and food and all those other things. And then we're growing it by all these employees. Is that the right answer? I mean, I know that we have streamlined a lot of computer systems, a lot of this and a lot of that, and invested, and this council has supported that. Yeah. But to throw employees at it, except for from my point of view, except for public safety, which I wholeheartedly support for fire and police. That's been our promise of this council, to support public safety for this community.
Sure.
So that's what I would say.
And to your question, is that the right thing to do? We would say absolutely it is the right thing to do. We'd say that the 7.5% figure that you quote is part of the catch-up that we've been doing. 2 years ago, we did a cut in the budget, actually, in order to batten down the hatches where the pandemic was related. And so, again, you can certainly, that math is actually correct, but we would say it's actually more illuminating to look at it over the course of time when you have a budget cut and you have a recovery years that are involved in that too, to look at that overall pace of growth. And we can say, certainly we can focus on hiring people, but people are the ones that deliver the services. And so I think it's the outcome that we're looking at. Are we investing in people that are doing the kinds of jobs and providing the kinds of customer service that we're hearing people ask for us out in the community and the private sector? And that's what we hear people asking for, and that's what we're trying to provide.
And not to go ping pong the rest of the session, but I know that what I hear is not a lack of customer services. And I also will say, I don't know that you can catch up over 16 years. I don't think that's our job. To add people that,
not
if
16,
we've got,
3
let me
years.
finish, and then I'll let you talk. I don't think that's not our mission. I don't think because we've been without X amount of employees over 10 years, that doesn't mean we need to catch up. I don't hear complaints about customer service. I hear about potholes. I hear about building permits, and I think that's being addressed by Director Blaha. I don't hear lack of customer service, that the city is not responsive in customer service. I do hear about public safety. I think that's being addressed, and I think that's something I will wholeheartedly support. So,
yeah, we agree on that.
Yeah, we can agree on that. But I don't want to monopolize the.
No, I just wanted to reiterate my interest in forecasting some of the additional revenues from casino. And I know it's hard to pinpoint right now, but I was hoping to see perhaps a range, a conservative range, and then something more aggressive on revenues. And you're right, it's probably too soon in our budget, but certainly what are you all seeing in other communities where they've brought casino and gambling forward? So
we can do that.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I just know that in other communities it has been impactful to their municipal budgets, and so I didn't know what that would look like for the city of Lincoln, where I know that you're declining an occupation tax. That's a hit there. So, and Kino, it's a trade-off. So,
thank you for that, Councilman Beckius.
I would just like to reiterate what Councilwoman Raybould just said. I think that if we're looking at a potential decrease in Kino revenue because of other gambling going on, just trying to get a forecast when the time is appropriate as to what that might look like. I know that that's obviously on your radar. It's obviously on our radar too, but I concur with Councilwoman Raybould of the importance of trying to figure out how that's all going to shake down, because we might have revenue models that from other communities that show some similar impacts perhaps, but who knows how it'll shake out here in Lincoln. And then I also just wanted to mention I know, thank you for having all the department directors talk about their FTEs and how that shakes down, you know, whether it's Randy talking about, hey, I have to take this person from contract to city employee, whether we're talking about any number of issues that create the fluctuation of FTEs over time. We're lucky in that we are in a growing community. Not every community in the world is like that.
Right.
And so I see everyone's point here, but I think that you know, growing communities have to figure out how do they adjust for these things. And thank you for having your directors you know, talk to us, because that will be a point of discussion here about FTEs and you know, and how do we adequately staff so that we can supply service to the city.
Right.
So and you know, continued discussions tomorrow with your directors about their FTEs and you know, their arguments for adding, if they're adding, or what have you.
No, we're happy to do that, and I appreciate you pointing out the other jurisdictions too, because, for example, the county and the LPS, they don't get any sales tax, so they don't have the luxury of the booming economy and the return on sales tax to make those investments. So we are lucky in that respect.
Anyone else on this issue? All right. Anyone else? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Invite our fire chief up.
Chief Engler, thank you for waiting.
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon. Dave Engler, Fire Chief, Lincoln Fire and Rescue. Glad to be here today. Our mission statement was revamped a couple of years ago, so our mission is to protect lives, property, and the environment through the highest level of professionalism while working efficiently as a team with the community and the resources provided. And that mission statement was developed not only with our internal stakeholders, but with our external stakeholders, and we're very proud of that and believe we're doing that in the city today. This is going to be just an overview of our organizational chart within the department. It hasn't changed a whole lot since we last talked, but just as a reminder, our daily head count for the minimum staffing for firefighters is 88 firefighters on a daily basis. We staff 16 fire engines with 3 to 4 personnel per shift or per day. 4 ladder trucks, 7 ambulances, 1 EMS supervisor, 2 battalion chiefs, and then not listed on there is we've got a driver of our hazmat, hazardous materials unit. Lincoln Fire and Rescue is funded through 3 sources. So we've got the general fund, which is the lion's share of the sources, but one thing I always remind everyone is our EMS is completely enterprise funded, so that's user fees. We put the bill out, we collect on that, and that's how we fund our ambulance service. That covers the 7 medic units that we staff on a daily basis. It covers their insurance, pension, all those things. So all those costs, equipment, is enterprise funded. And then the grants and aid is our federal USAR team. So FEMA gives us money for those positions. So that's all from federal dollars. And here again is our EMS transport fund total revenue and the personnel services and total expenditures. You'll see on this, as we talked about, just got done with a conversation about personnel. The plan is to add 6 personnel to Lincoln Fire and Rescue in the next, or the proposal is to add 6 personnel. That will be enterprise funded. So what we're proposing is to put an 8th medic unit on the streets.
6 per year?
No, that's 6 for, yes, 6
Okay.
total.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what we need to staff that medic unit. That would come out of our EMS enterprise fund. So that comes from user fees. Reason being, our call volume is drastically increasing. Our population and everything is increasing, and we are not meeting response times. And response times aren't always a good indicator of performance necessarily. I want to be careful about how I say that because there are areas where it is, but what we're really looking at is the availability of our medic units for when calls come in. And we're getting on that line with most of our medic units where they're just not available as much as they should be to respond to those emergencies. So certainly adding that 8th medic unit is critical at this point. In actuality, we could probably use more. But again, we're trying to be very judicious in how we spend those enterprise funds. So we are now at the point where we forecast needing that 8th medic unit. This proposed budget increases funding for our fire apparatus and equipment. So what we're hoping to do is, we all remember a couple of years ago we had a lot of our fire apparatus was really in bad shape. We've built that up, but the key is to sustain it, because in the past, about every 10 years ago, we have an apparatus crisis. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do is ensure that that never happens again, because we actually pay more money to get out of a crisis than we do just to keep things on the good end. So we're also looking at station improvements to enhance operations, improve response times, and improve the health and safety of our firefighters. So you've all seen the study of the current state of many of our facilities. That's another area where we've kind of kicked the can down the road. What we're trying to do is just make sure we're maintaining and keeping them in good working order. We are making progress on rebuilding Station 8. That was just one that we couldn't do anything else. We've got to tear it down and rebuild it. So we're in the process of selecting a local architect partner to do that. And then when we talk about technology, improving response times and everything, we're continuing the implementation of the new CAD for closest unit dispatching. And I think we're going to see with our full year data, I think we're going to see some real improvements in response times. And then we're continuing to tweak the CAD to try to work to our advantage to get the units there faster, and then be able to maintain good public safety with the resources that we have. We've continued focused efforts on inclusivity in the fire station and in serving the community. One of the great things that we've done and we started it last year, was including outreach efforts for new stakeholders, recruitment workshops, and department training. So we've really focused on department training to improve inclusivity within our department. We've started workshops on recruitment. They've been incredibly successful. We still aren't seeing the numbers of applicants that we had in years past, but what we're seeing is high quality applicants that really understand the job and what they're getting into. So that's been great. We're going to do it again this year as we begin our recruitment efforts for this year. And then we're very proud in Lincoln Fire and Rescue that we're 3 times the national average for women in the fire service. And about the 12 to 13% that we have is still lower than we'd like to be in the fire service. We're doing really well, and I think that is reflective of our recruitment efforts and the things we've done to change that. Some of the things that we're looking at right now is we're maintaining very high cardiac survival rates, and I'll go into some of the benchmarks and performance in just a little bit, but they're above the national average. We're looking at putting an 8th medic unit in service to meet the challenges and continue those efforts. And then we are, with paramedics, they're doing a lot of work. And so what we're doing is we're trying to figure out ways of deploying them better to kind of reduce their workload and shift it to some of our emergency medical technicians on some of those lower level calls. So there's the ALS calls, the advanced life support for paramedics, and we're trying to focus more on the basic life support calls and getting our emergency medical technicians more involved in them to reduce the workload of those paramedics. And then we have a new reporting system coming which should reduce their workload too, because we won't be currently, we've got the fire engine doing a report, the medic unit doing a report, but they don't marry up. So with the new reporting system, they will marry up, and so there's not a duplication of efforts, which we estimate will reduce each call by about 10 to 15 minutes, or each report by 10 to 15 minutes. That gets those units in service faster. And then we're ensuring our turnout times under a minute and 40 seconds during the day and 2 minutes at night for EMS calls, 1 minute and 50 seconds during the day and 2 minutes at night for fire and hazmat rescue calls. So our budget additions that we're proposing, 6 firefighter paramedic positions, which would put our 8th medic unit in service. We did have a SAFER grant from 2018 that ran out, so we've had to incur the complete cost of those employees as a result. We do have another SAFER grant pending, but we haven't heard whether we'll get that or not yet. And then restoration of overtime funding, and what we need that for is to meet the contractual agreements we have with labor on that daily staffing that I talked about earlier, and then the debt service funding for the Station 8 rebuild, which we're beginning, and we believe that we'll probably see that station torn down in early October if everything goes well. So very proud of this 2021's performance for Lincoln Fire and Rescue. We are at 82% of containing the structure fires to the area of origin. Our goal is 80%. We're at 82. That is reflective of the investment of those new fire stations. We're starting to see the results of having them in service. And what that means is if there's a fire in a kitchen, it means that we're able to get to that fire in time to confine it to the kitchen 82% of the time, so it doesn't extend into the attic and burn the roof off the house and everything. So that's those are some good numbers there. Save at least 95% of the value of property and contents threatened by fire. We're at 98%. One of the goals is to have early CPR throughout the community. So when a person goes into cardiac arrest, we want to see how through the dispatchers or just through community awareness, the Pulse Point app, we want someone to start CPR right away. We're at 67%, which is very, very high. We were at 70% last year. I didn't think we could maintain it, but 67% is pretty darn good. So those numbers are outstanding. And then this is something that we've talked about a lot. We're very proud of. In our cardiac arrest survival rate, we want equal to or better than the national average. The national average is at 29%. Lincoln Fire and Rescue is at 56%. Amazing. I'm sorry. I thought someone said something. Then our first unit arrival, 80%. We're still in the green. We'd like to be a little bit higher than that. Ambulance arrival response times, again, we're at 82%. We'd like to be above 90%. We're hoping that 8th medic unit will start to bring our number up. The problem is every time we add a medic unit, the call volume also goes up, so we're kind of trying to play catch up all the time, but it will definitely have an impact in our response times. And then right now I'd entertain any questions that you have.
Questions for Chief Engler? Yes. Councilwoman Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Engler, I do have a question about the additional medic unit, which I think is a fantastic addition. But given that, and I know that they are funded primarily or entirely by enterprise funding, so they cover their costs.
Yes.
How long do you think it'll take for the 8th unit to be able to cover its costs?
The income is kind of ongoing, and what we're projecting is that that we can cover that 8th medic unit. So it's not really it's not a matter of we'll be able to catch up. It's that we've got money continually flowing to fund it. Now I will say I would not be able to fund a 9th medic unit. You know, we're teetering in kind of that zone. And that's one of the challenges. So the enterprise fund is great because it saves money for the taxpayers, but at the same time, there's kind of a balancing act. And what you're seeing in that 82% response time, we want to be at 90. And so we're kind of getting into that zone where the enterprise fund would certainly not be able to fund a 9th medic unit. We do believe with the revenue that we can do an 8th, but that's one of the disadvantages of the enterprise fund is we're probably not where we need to be from a response standpoint, but we're doing a good job and our outcomes are showing that we're getting good patient care. So I'm not concerned at this point in time, but you know, we're kind of in that gray area right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? Councilman Beckius.
Dave, could you reiterate for us too, for anyone who may be, anyone who's doesn't have anything better to do, might be listening to us, could you talk about some of the fee structures for the enterprise fund and maybe how those fees have risen here recently or anything of that nature?
Absolutely. The enterprise fund requires that we go through IMSOA, the Emergency Medical Services Oversight Agency, for they have to look at what our what fees we're charging, and then obviously they go to council for approval. We just did request maybe last week or the week before a 5% increase, and what we're trying to do with that is keep up with personnel costs,
Sure.
equipment costs, and all those costs, and then we're obviously trying to stay on the front end of that so we can fund things like the 8th medic unit. And as the call volume goes up, there will be more revenue, and hopefully we'll be able to, when needed, fund that 9th medic unit. But again, you know, we accept assignment on Medicare and Medicaid patients and everything. So the actual cost of the call, we get a fraction of that. So that's why we have to keep up those ambulance fees to a number that we can continue to fund the system, if that's what you're looking for.
It is. You know, one of the concerns as I go through this budget cycle here, this 2-year budget cycle, is one, not having the forecast as to what's going to happen with our economy, of course, but also you know, everyone trying to deal with the impacts of inflation and whether or not you know, a city has to deal with inflation just like any employer does as well, meaning that we'll have to pay people more. That's just part of the name of the game, if you will. And, just wanting to make sure that you know, your fee structure is keeping up with what you think you know, ultimately your cost increases will be as well.
And forecasting is difficult in that respect. As fire chief, I'm trying to balance not only the cost of inflation and equipment and all that with what will people see as reasonable, and so there's a balancing act. I feel that the 5% will be okay at this point in time, but you know, but that's just a guess based on our past history and everything, because the costs of medical equipment, the costs of ambulances, right now we can't get chassis for our ambulances at all. So that's going to put things behind. It's going to cause us to have to do repairs that may cost a little bit more. So it's a difficult thing to try to figure out. But we do feel that 5% is adequate to sustain us right now.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for the chief or comments? Yes, Councilwoman Washington.
So much for allowing me another question. As I was looking back over and I saw the SAFER grants, which is great. I'm so glad we're getting SAFER grants, but at some point we have to incorporate those costs into our general revenue costs. So could you just go back just a little bit and tell us a little bit about the past SAFER grant? How many FTE were we able to hire, and for how long did the grant cover that? And then is the next or upcoming SAFER grant application in the same format?
Yes, okay, so the 2018 SAFER grant lasted 3 years. It hired 15 firefighters. It wasn't 100%, right? It was scaled, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but typically it was 100% 1 year, 60, 30, and then 0. That may not be the exact numbers. I can't remember with 100% certainty.
Okay.
The current SAFER grants are 100% for 3 years with no requirement to continue to keep those positions. Now, they want you to keep the positions, of course, but there's absolutely no requirement. And part of that is reflective of some of the uncertainty in the economy. And a lot of governmental bodies were saying, hey, we really want to take advantage of this, but we can't guarantee that we can sustain all the positions. Mm-hmm. So the current grants are 100% for 3 years.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Other questions? I have one, Chief.
Yes.
So in terms of recruitment, can we talk about that just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Kinds of things you do. And do you know offhand if you have a line item budget for recruitment in your budget? Or do you just do recruitment?
We do not have a line item budget for recruitment. We utilize current funds within the budget. We have very dedicated personnel who are willing to kind of do that as side projects. We don't have anyone that is absolutely designated for recruitment. So we have a recruitment committee that consists of firefighters, and we try to send them to colleges or job fairs and that sort of thing. It's a little bit hit and miss just because our primary focus right now is on response. So, that's where really the majority of our personnel are placed in the response area. So a lot of these other things, we utilize our response personnel that come in on their days off to do, just side duties and that sort of thing. So our recruitment committee, and then my administrative officer is sitting back there. Not only is she really good at budgeting, but she does focus a lot on our recruitment efforts, and she kind of oversees a lot of those. And she's the one that came up with the idea of these what we call them, the workshops. Yes, workshops, which I just said, but the workshops, which have been incredibly successful. In fact, we had some of the attendees attend. We had 4 workshops, and they attended all 4 just because they enjoyed the information and interacting with our crews that were there and everything. So that's been a huge hit.
That's helpful to know. And thank you for all your efforts. I've been exploring, or curious, I should say, not really exploring, if that's the case in other public safety departments, whether they're interested in a recruitment line item budget, if it would be helpful. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I don't expect you to answer
Sure.
today. This is rhetorical. Or if other municipal government public safety departments utilize recruitment line item budgets within their public safety departments versus human resources, or what that may look like for us. So I'm just curious, not
Sure.
expecting any more answers. So.
And I will point out, I talk to fire chiefs all across the United States, and everyone is experiencing difficulty in recruiting firefighters, firefighter paramedics, firefighter EMTs. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of a sign of the times, and that's where we all have to be competitive. And when we talk about equipment and those things, having safe equipment, when people are looking at where they want to be a firefighter, I want them to be able to say, hey, Lincoln Fire provides good equipment, good working conditions, and good outcomes to the public. It's a great place to work, because we are in competition for, when you have a paramedic, right now a paramedic can go anywhere they want. And there's a lot of places with a lot nicer weather than Lincoln, Nebraska. So we just have to find ways of bringing them in and creating an environment. And that's why inclusivity is so important. But create an environment in which people want to come work for Lincoln, Nebraska, because that gives us the edge for those people that are willing to go anywhere.
And truly, wasn't this a challenge even pre-pandemic? Is that correct? I mean, it's just been heightened, the workforce shortage,
Yes.
by the pandemic, but you had those same challenges before.
We were starting to see that trend. When I got hired on the fire department, we had lines around the block. Now we're not seeing that, and that's the trend. And I think some of it is it's the fire department's paramilitary. We work shifts, and you have to work on holidays. You know, you have to work nights, and there's a lot of different careers out there that you can kind of pick when you want to work, and you know, we just don't have that flexibility. So for a lot of people, it's just not attractive. And then the stress and the health effects that we're finding, there's a lot of people out there that say, no, thank you. But I'm very thankful to the workforce that we have right now, because we have some great people that are doing great work.
Great. Yes.
I'll piggyback on that. Because we want to make sure, of course, and I think the public wants us to ensure that, you know, when we provide funding for FTEs, that especially in public safety, that they're going filled. Dave, ballpark me, if you will. Any given day, how many open positions do you have that if you could fill, you would fill?
I don't know the exact, because the budget office has been very generous in understanding that when we hire a firefighter, it takes a good 9 months before we can put them out on the street.
Sure.
So they've allowed me to overhire, and so what we do is we forecast the firefighters that are going to leave, and then we overhire for that. So when they do leave, we can get them out on the streets. I'm not 100% sure what those numbers are right now. We had 4 retire, I think, last week. So it kind of fluctuates, but we've got a recruit class of 13 right now. And like I said, we've had some retire and we've got some coming. So we forecast, and that's just good partnership with finance and budget in anticipating these things, because it also reduces our overtime liability during the summer. So I can get you those numbers though, so you have exact numbers, but I just can't tell you right now with 100% certainty.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
Anything else? Seeing none, thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Wrap up, Mr. Carlson?
What we got here.
Yeah, we're still ahead of schedule. That's
Nope.
great.
Just again, thanks for time and your attention. And I know Sherry's been taking good notes. I've been taking good notes, and we'll continue to follow up on information. And we've let the public know that we'll be back here again
Will we
9
get
o'clock
a
tomorrow
packet
morning.
like this again as
Yes,
well?
sir.
On email? Okay.
Yep.
Great.
See
All
you
right.
then.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone.
You too.
Thank you. We are adjourned till tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Yes. Yes. That would be good.